Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Blakemore. I teach travel and sometimes triumph, and this is going to be a teach travel sort of triumph video. Let me explain. In this video, I wanted to do a question and answers about working here in Dubai. One of the things I get asked the most throughout all of my social media platforms is what it's like to teach, live, and I suppose work here in Dubai. So in this video, I wanted to break down some of those questions and answer them for you. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask down in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, I do make a range of teaching and traveling content, so feel free to subscribe down in the corner. It's always appreciated. And if you want to, hit the like button. So let's get straight into the video. One of the things that I get asked the most is, what is the biggest difference teaching here in Dubai? That's a question that I always have to really think about, but I think it comes down to a culture of respect. I personally think when compared to teaching in the UK, there is more of a culture of respect towards education. Now, some people might find that subjective, but for me personally, I've definitely found that people hold education higher on a pedestal here in Dubai. That's definitely a biggest difference, and in that way it's respected. Adding on to that culture of respect, I was recently asked by the national newspaper here in the UAE to write an article about school. So they asked a teacher to write an article for their newspaper. Now that for me was sort of baffling, because in the UK that's not something you often see. It's often a bashed profession within the UK, and it's something I guess that's taken for granted. Whether that's because education is paid for by the UK, I don't really know, but I do know that some do take that education for granted. Another one of the biggest differences that I feel I have here in the UAE is parental support. Parents generally that I've come across cannot do enough to support you as a teacher and their children. Now, obviously, again, that can be subjective, but for me, from personal experience, I've had nothing but positive experiences and parents just going above and beyond to support their children. If I've asked for something, for whether it's like things like toilet rolls, you know, for those D&T activities, you'd be completely surprised how inundated you become with toilet rolls, because parents just cannot do enough to support their children's education. Now, at the same time, children's education here is privatized, it's paid for, so I suppose there is that pressure from parents to make sure that those children are getting the best results as possible. Now, if I was paying for education, I would also expect the same thing, so it's kind of understandable. But again, I don't feel that pressure too much. I still feel like education is put on that pedestal, so as a result, I feel like my work-life balance here in Dubai is better than what it was back in the UK. I often get asked, can you find me a job? Are there any jobs going? And I never really know how to answer that question, as I'm sure you can imagine. What I can say is there are a range of different platforms that advertise a range of different jobs, both through secondary, college, and primary school, along with foundation stage too. You can go onto websites such as The Guardian back in the UK to find some of those jobs. Tess was the main source that I used when looking for jobs, but there's also other websites such as Teach Abroad and Teach Away, I believe it's called. So have a look at those. I'll put some links down in my description. So yeah, feel free to click onto those. In terms of when to apply, I'd say now. I would say the application window starts in about October, with some earlier positions coming available, all the way through to April being the main time of recruitment. However, you do get those late recruitments from April all the way up until June for some schools. So always keep your eyes peeled on the websites that I've just mentioned. And yeah, do schools here in the UAE accept NQTs? And the answer is yes, but less and less. Now, I'll explain further. You will find generally that most schools will prefer 2 to 3 years experience. Now, most schools here in the UAE prefer people who have previously taught in the UAE, but don't be disheartened if you haven't taught here in the UAE, because they are still looking for those people who are experienced, and they're always looking for very good standard teachers to be within schools. Now, in terms of NQTs, it's going to be harder. You will also find that your pay as an NQT out here is going to be less. At the same time, if you are an NQT, you might find it harder when other people who are more experienced are applying for those positions. I'd also say you're more likely to find an NQT job here in the UAE later on in the year, as schools start to reduce their requirements of experience. Are there professional development opportunities like in the UK? That is a great question, and the answer is yes. There are still CPDs, a range of different CPDs throughout the UAE, and there is plenty of opportunity to go to them. I was lucky enough to go to a CPD with Mr. P. There's a lot of rhyming going on there, and that was great. And I'm also offered other CPD. I'm also offered opportunities to go into other schools, to go and see other people teach throughout the UAE. There is a DBIS group of schools here in Dubai, which stands for Dubai British International Schools, and what you will find is that many different schools have opportunities to go and see other people teach, both internally within their school, but also at other schools too. Are people supportive? Now, I'm guessing by that you mean teachers, and the answer is yes. It's not much different to being in the UK in the way that everyone sort of chips in together and is a collaborative, supportive unit. Now, obviously, you'll always get those individuals that are not as supportive, but that happens. But generally, as a rule of thumb, people are supportive and do collaborate. I also find, which is fair to say, that schools are bigger here in Dubai. So there are schools out there in Dubai that are 14 form entry, meaning there are 14 forms, 14 classes to every single year group. So as a result, there is huge year groups and they can share different ideas. Within my year group here in my school, it's a 6th form entry, so the opportunity for sharing and collaborating ideas is much greater than in a typical 1 or 2 form school in the UK. Next question, how is the curriculum here in the UAE different to that in the UK? Now, I have spoken about this at length in a recent Week in the Life of a Teacher vlog. I spent a long time sort of talking about differences about teaching here in Dubai, so that's definitely worth checking out. I'll put a link up there. One of the biggest differences is social studies. Social studies is now a core subject, and you will find that covers a range of different UAE type aspects. So talking about people who are famous in Dubai, people who help us in Dubai, not just Dubai, sorry, also the UAE, talking about a range of different, for example, geography, human and physical features here in the UAE, and it covers a range of different aspects. So that's a partial difference. You've also got MEC, which stands for Moral Education Curriculum, and that sort of talks about a similar thing to PSHE, but there's some smaller differences. How easy is the paperwork coming from the UK to the UAE? Now, I had to really sort of look at this one and remind myself because I couldn't remember. Now, for the most part, I was really lucky in the way that the school sorted out the majority of the paperwork. I did have little bits to do, and there was one process that I always remember was a little bit more stressful, and that was the attestation process. I hope I've said that right. What I mean by that is you need to get all your sort of legal documents such as your degree certificate, birth certificate. If you're married, you need your marriage certificate to be attested. Now, to do that, what you need to do is go to your solicitor, get them to sign it off, then you send it to the UK, whether it's UK place to get attested by them and sort of verified. Once you've done that, then you can send it off to the UAE embassy and they attest it. Once you've done that, then you need to scan a range of different documents over to your school so that they can start the paperwork process. There are things that you need to do when you're coming over to the UAE in terms of paperwork, but rather than take the advice from me, once you've got the job, those are questions that you should definitely ask your school because they will be much, much greater in the loop and be able to inform you further on that. Is there less stress and less workload teaching here in the UAE? That one's very difficult to answer. Now, I know one of the other biggest differences teaching here in the UAE is that the days are longer. I get here to school at 6:30 in the morning and sometimes don't finish until 5 o'clock at night. So the days are as long, if not longer, here in the UAE. Additionally, I also know that there are weeks here in the UAE where I have more workload than what I did in the UK, but also vice versa. I would also say more so towards the UK. I'm often had more stressful weeks in the UK in terms of workload, but I did have a huge year 6 class. I had, I think, was it 33 year 6s within that class, and there was obviously a big marking load, and that's one of my teacher weaknesses is marking. I'm really slow at marking, so I often find my workload there was quite great. I'm going to finish off on a fun question that I got asked, and that was, if I could teach anywhere in Asia, where would I? And I think the answer to that one would probably be somewhere like Hong Kong or Singapore. I've been to both of those places and loved them. I also liked how they were quite Western in some ways when I compare it to some of the other Southeast Asian parts that I've seen. I think, yeah, those two places would be more commonly where I would prefer to teach. I think Hong Kong has some great opportunities, but I also loved Singapore at the same time. So who knows? As I said at the start of the video, if you do have any other questions, feel free to add them down in the comments down below. If you are new to the channel, then welcome. Feel free to hit that subscribe button down in the corner. I make a range of teaching and traveling videos, as I said at the start. If you feel like it, hit the like button. I always do appreciate that. But for now, I'm out.